My father found $30,000 under my mattress. I spent it on your sister's honeymoon. Then my grandfather came in and said, "Son, where's the money I gave you to keep?" Dad looked at me, pale, and chaos broke out. My name is Giovanni. I'm 29 years old and I live in a house on the outskirts of the city with my parents, Roberto and Margarita, and my younger sister, Christina. For as long as I can remember, I've been the breadwinner of this family. I work as a delivery driver, a job that doesn't pay much, but with hard work, it allows me to cover the household bills, electricity, water, food, the internet that Christina uses for her social media, and little else. Every peso I earn goes into keeping this house afloat. And although I sometimes feel like a pack mule, I've never complained. My parents are 58, but they've always said they're too old to work. My father, Roberto, spends his days watching television or playing dominoes with his friends. While my mother, Margarita, spends her time in the kitchen or gossiping with the neighbors. Christina, my 25-year-old sister, is the jewel in the crown. To my parents, she is perfect, the spoiled daughter, the one who can do no wrong, who deserves everything without lifting a finger. They've never made her work, even though she's healthy and perfectly capable. They always say she's too young or that she'll find her way eventually. Meanwhile, I break my back so that everyone can live. Everything started to get complicated one day in April when I came home after a 12-hour shift. I was exhausted, my feet swollen and my back aching. I collapsed on the sofa, hoping for a moment of peace. But Christina walked into the dining room with a smile that stretched across her entire face. "I'm getting married," she shouted, showing off a sparkling ring on her finger. My parents shot up as if they'd been hit by an electric shock. Mom ran to hug her, crying with emotion, and Dad kissed her on the forehead, saying it was the best news of the year. I, on the other hand, only managed a half smile. It wasn't that I wasn't happy for her, but something in my stomach twisted into a knot. I knew this was going to mean trouble for me. "Congratulations, Chris," I said, trying to sound sincere. "So, who's the lucky guy?" "His name is Diego," she replied, still beaming. "He's an accountant. He has a good job. The wedding is in 3 months. And it's going to be perfect." Mom and Dad couldn't stop talking about how proud they were. I stayed quiet, taking a sip of water, waiting for the conversation to end. But then, Christina dropped the bomb. "Diego is paying for half of the wedding, but I have to cover the other half. We need about $20,000 to make everything just the way we want it." Silence. I felt my parents' eyes lock onto me as if I were an ATM. Mom was the first to speak. "Giovanni, you've always been the responsible one in the family. Surely you can help your sister, right?" I froze. "Help with what?" My salary barely covered the bills, and the little I managed to save was for emergencies. I didn't have $20,000, not even $2,000 to just throw away. "Mom, I don't have that kind of money," I said, trying to stay calm. "You know, everything I earn goes into this house. Where am I supposed to get $20,000 from?" Dad frowned as if I had insulted him. "What do you mean you don't have it?" he said, raising his voice. "You're always working. You must have something saved up. Don't be selfish, Giovanni. It's your sister's wedding." "Selfish," I retorted, feeling my blood boil. "I pay for the electricity, the water, the food, everything. Who keeps this house running?" "You, Mom, Christina, it's me. And now you're asking me to pull money out of thin air. Why don't you ask Christina to get a job?" Christina put on an offended expression as if I had said something unforgivable. Mom clutched her chest, dramatic as always. "How dare you talk to your sister like that?" she yelled. "She's starting her life, and you, as her older brother, should be supporting her." "Supporting her doesn't mean I have to pay for everything," I replied, losing my patience. "If Diego can't cover the whole wedding, then Christina should get a job. Or you too, who always claim you're too old but have no problem going dancing at the club on weekends." Dad stood up, pointing his finger at me. "Don't cross the line, Giovanni. Family comes first, and you're not doing anything for yours. You're just jealous. That's what you are." That word hit me like a punch. Jealous. Me, the one who wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to support all of them. I got up from the sofa furious. "I'm not jealous. I'm the only one who works here. If you want money for the wedding, find it yourselves. I have nothing more to give." I stormed off to my room and slammed the door. I could hear Mom muttering something about my bad attitude and Christina complaining that I never supported her. I threw myself on the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I always ended up being the bad guy in the story. The following days were tense. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was to make snide remarks about my selfishness. Christina, for her part, acted as if I had ruined her life. I didn't care much, or at least that's what I tried to tell myself, but deep down, it hurt. I had always been the one to carry every burden, and now they were treating me like a stranger. A week later, Dad came home with a forced smile. He sat down in the dining room and announced that he had gotten a $10,000 loan from a friend to cover part of the wedding expenses. Mom and Christina applauded as if he'd won the lottery, but I said nothing. I knew that money wasn't a gift. Someone would have to pay it back. And I had a good guess who that someone would be. "Giovanni," Dad said, looking at me intently. "I hope that now at least you'll make an effort for your sister. We don't want her to think we don't love her." "I don't have any money, Dad," I repeated, tired of the same conversation. "And if you took out a loan, you'll have to figure out how to pay it back." "You're so ungrateful," Mom said, shaking her head. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." I didn't answer. It wasn't worth it. I went to my room and tried to forget about it, but my parents' attitude changed after that. It wasn't just that they ignored me anymore. Now they treated me with contempt. Dad would mutter things like, "You don't turn your back on family," every time he walked past me. And Mom would sigh dramatically whenever the wedding was mentioned. Christina, meanwhile, avoided me, but didn't miss an opportunity to show off the preparations on social media. As the wedding approached, the house was filled with chaos. Mom spent her days helping Christina with the details, the dress, the flowers, the catering. Dad was in charge of coordinating with the friend who had lent him the money, though he never said how he planned to pay it back. I just kept working, paying the bills, and trying not to think about how unfair it all was. The day before the wedding, my paternal grandparents, Alfredo and Antonia, arrived from their city 2 hours away. I had always gotten along well with them, especially with my grandfather, Alfredo. He was an upright, hard-working man who had raised his family through sheer effort. When they arrived, they gave me a warm hug, and for a moment, I felt like someone in this family truly appreciated me. That night, after dinner, my grandfather pulled me aside. His expression was serious, almost worried. "Giovanni, I need to ask you an important favor," he said, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "Of course, Grandpa. What's wrong?" I replied. He pulled a thick envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. "I just withdrew $30,000 from the bank. It's very important money for something I can't risk losing. I don't want to carry it around, and I trust you more than anyone. Can you keep it safe until I ask for it back?" I didn't hesitate for a second. My grandfather had always been good to me, and if he was asking for something like this, it was because he really needed it. "No problem, Grandpa. I'll keep it safe." "Thank you, my son," he said, patting my shoulder. "You're the only one I trust." That night, I hid the envelope where I thought no one would ever find it. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. Not because I distrusted them, although thinking back, maybe I should have, but because my grandfather had asked for discretion. I went to sleep with the peace of mind that the money was secure. The wedding day arrived and the house was buzzing with activity. Christina was radiant in her white dress. Mom cried with emotion every 5 minutes and Dad ran around making sure everything was in order. I simply put on an old suit from my closet and attended as just another guest. I didn't feel like part of the celebration. Not after how they had treated me. The wedding was simple but beautiful. It was held in a small hall decorated with white flowers and warm lights. There were about 50 guests, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends of Christina and Diego, and of course, my grandparents. Everyone seemed happy, dancing, and laughing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. At the reception, Christina stood on a chair and announced into a microphone that she and Diego were going on their honeymoon next week. People clapped, but then she put on a dramatic face and said, "We still need a little more money to pay for the hotel and flights, but I'm sure my family will help me out." I looked at my parents, and as always, they looked at me. Dad came over and said in a low voice, "Giovanni, at least help with the honeymoon. I'm already in debt for the wedding. Don't make me look bad again." "Dad, I already told you I don't have any money," I replied, trying not to raise my voice. "I don't know why you keep asking me." "Because your family," said Mom, who had joined us. "Don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I retorted, completely fed up. "And who pays the bills in this house? Who makes sure our lights don't get cut off? I'm the selfish one for not having money appear out of thin air. Find another solution." Christina, who had overheard everything, crossed her arms and put on that victim face she was so good at. "I didn't expect this from you, Giovanni," she said. "I thought you'd want to see me happy." I didn't respond. I turned around and went to sit in a corner far away from them. The party continued, but I was no longer in the mood to be there. To my surprise, Dad left early, saying he was tired and needed to rest. No one thought much of it. Everyone was too busy dancing and drinking. The party ended at 4 a.m. and I went home exhausted, but with a strange feeling in my chest. The next day, I woke up late with a headache that felt like a drip. The first thing I did was check under the mattress just to make sure my grandfather's money was still there. I reached my hand under, felt for the envelope, and there was nothing. My heart stopped. I checked once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The envelope with the $30,000 was gone. I sat on the bed, pale with cold sweat running down my back. How could this be? No one knew the money was there. No one except. I remembered my dad had left the wedding early. A horrible idea crossed my mind. I got up and ran to the dining room where Dad was sitting, drinking coffee as if nothing had happened. "Dad," I said, trying to stay calm. "Did you take the money I had hidden?" He laughed, a nervous laugh that set my teeth on edge. "What did you think? That I didn't know you had savings?" he said, looking at me with contempt. "You're a selfish person, Giovanni. Your sister needed money for her wedding and her honeymoon, and you wouldn't help her." I tried to speak, but he cut me off. "I spent that money on Christina's honeymoon. I gave her $20,000 to pay for the hotel, the flights, and everything else. And I used the other $10,000 to pay back my friend for the wedding loan. Don't play innocent. I know you had that money saved." I was floored. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, that money wasn't mine," I said, my voice trembling. He laughed again as if it were a joke. "Stop pretending, Giovanni. Don't be ridiculous." Before I could answer, the door opened. It was my grandfather, Alfredo, who had come to say goodbye because he and my grandmother, Antonia, were heading back to their city that afternoon. He smiled when he saw me, but his expression changed when he saw my face. "My son, is everything all right?" he asked. "The money I gave you to keep safe, where is it? I need to take it with me." Dad went pale. His eyes went wide as saucers and for the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. "Grandpa, I started, but I couldn't continue. I didn't want to betray my father, but I couldn't lie either." "What's wrong, Giovanni?" my grandfather insisted. "Give me back the $30,000 I gave you." I had no choice. With a lump in my throat, I said, "Dad spent it." "What?" my grandfather yelled, turning to my father. "Roberto, what did you do?" Dad held up his hands as if trying to calm him down. Dad, I didn't know it was yours. I thought it was Giovanni's. He's always hiding money. He's so selfish. Shut up, my grandfather roared, something I had never seen him do. That money was to pay the mortgage on my house, Roberto. Without that money, Antonia and I will be out on the street. How could you? At that moment, the door opened again. It was Christina walking in with a huge smile, oblivious to the disaster that was unfolding. Dad, thanks to the money you gave me, I've already booked the hotel and flights for the honeymoon, she said, jumping with excitement. Dad tried to silence her, but it was too late. My grandfather had heard everything. His face was red with rage. You have 3 days to get that money back to me, Roberto, he said, his voice trembling with fury. I don't care if you're my son. If you don't, I'm suing you. And without another word, he took my grandmother's arm and left, leaving a heavy silence in the house. Dad collapsed into a chair, crying like I had never seen him before. But instead of taking responsibility for his mistake, he looked at me with hatred. This is your fault, Giovanni, he screamed, slamming his fist on the table. Why didn't you tell me that money belonged to my father? If you had told me, I wouldn't have touched it. Now I'm in this mess because of you. I just stood there with my arms crossed, feeling the fury burn inside me. My fault. After years of carrying this family, of paying every bill, of giving up my own dreams so they could have food on the table, now it was my fault. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. My fault? I replied, my voice shaking with indignation. You took something that wasn't yours, Dad. You went through my things. You stole $30,000 that didn't belong to you. How was I supposed to know you were going to sneak into my room like a thief? This is what you get for sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. He shot up from his chair, furious, his face red and the veins in his neck bulging. He took a step toward me, raising his hand as if he were going to push or hit me. For a second, I felt a knot in my stomach. But this was no longer the old Giovanni who would lower his head and accept everything in silence. I stared him down, not backing away, my fists clenched. Don't touch me, I said in a voice so firm it surprised even me. I'm sick of this. Sick of you, of Mom, of Christina. Sick of being the only one carrying everything while you all treat me like garbage. His eyes widened as if he couldn't believe that I, his responsible son, was speaking to him like that. He lowered his hand slowly, but said nothing. He just breathed heavily like a trapped bull. In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. I couldn't keep living under the same roof as someone who blamed me for his own mistakes, who had stolen from me, and who, on top of it all, expected me to rescue him. I turned around, went into my room, and grabbed my backpack. I started stuffing in the essentials, clothes, my old laptop, important documents, my phone charger. With every item I packed, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. When I finished packing, I slung the backpack over my shoulder and walked out to the dining room. They were sitting there looking at me as if I were a traitor. I'm not selfish, I said, looking at both of them. I'm the only one who has kept this house standing, but not anymore. You figure out how to pay the bills, how to fix this mess. I'm leaving. Mom opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked out of the house, closing the door behind me. The cool afternoon air hit my face. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I moved into a small apartment in the city center. I stopped paying the bills for my parents' house and focused on myself for the first time in years. It wasn't easy. Money was still tight, but at least now I only had to worry about myself. A month later, I found out what happened. Dad couldn't get the $30,000 to pay back my grandfather. The bank foreclosed on my grandparents' house, and my grandfather kept his word. He sued my father for theft. He asked me to testify against him, and although it pained me, I agreed. I couldn't lie for someone who had betrayed me. Dad ended up in jail and Mom moved in with Christina and Diego, who now support her. Christina went on her honeymoon as if nothing had happened and now lives her carefree life as always. My grandparents, meanwhile, are staying with me in my apartment. They have nowhere else to go and I couldn't leave them alone after everything that happened. They thank me every day. And while it's not easy, it feels good to help someone who truly appreciates it. For the first time in my life, I feel free. I no longer carry the weight of a family that never valued what I did for them. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that whatever happens, I will face it with my head held high. Subscribe for more daily stories.